Hello, my name is Paul Jones, author of Concerning a Nation and several videos on Bible prophecy. Many people these days believe that the end times and the rise of the beast are certain to happen in the modern age because they require advanced technology. This is a complete myth, and I shall explain why. Many years ago, when I didn't know the Bible very well, I was talking to a friend about Zechariah and the apocalyptic events in chapter 14. We agreed that there might have been a reference to nuclear weapons. Later on, when I read the Bible properly, I realised that the warriors were riding horses, mules, camels and asses. When it comes to nuclear weapons, I'm given to understand that horses are a very shaky delivery system, as if the judgments of the Lord require human technology. After I'd noticed that, I began to realise that all references to war in the end times are fought with ancient technology. All of them. All over the Bible, in the prophetic sections, there are references to swords, chariots, fire and horses. There are no references to modern technology anywhere. But some people try to make out that there are, and here in Daniel 12 is the prime Bible quotation that underlies any exposition on this subject. Many shall roam to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. I pronounce this verse to be peerlessly the most deliberately and dishonestly misinterpreted verse in the whole sacred canon. Now, there are various different translations of this phrase, but they all pretty much add up to the same thing. Nowhere in any translation does the word exponential appear, yet somehow it gets put in. An exponential increase in knowledge, it means, apparently. Even if they don't say exponential, they try to make out that that's the implication of it. It's the usual story. One person says it and they all repeat it without thinking. And it just isn't there. All this phrase is saying is that while the prophecy is put away, people will roam to and fro and increase knowledge. It just means a long, long time. The movement of men and the increase of knowledge are part of life, and even if we were all still ploughing with oxen in the 21st century, knowledge would have increased since that prophecy. And it doesn't say people will fly anywhere either. The whole history of the world is the movement of people and the increase of learning. Nothing else can be drawn from this verse. In chapter 11, which describes the battles of the end times, we have the descriptions of the warfare. But the king of the north shall rush upon him with chariots and horsemen and with many ships. Daniel 11:40. He shall deal with the strongest fortresses. You don't have fortresses in the modern age because air power renders them useless. In Revelation 19 at Armageddon, the birds are invited to feast on the flesh of horses and their riders. Again, in Revelation, the fall of Babylon is described. We get a very full description of what the merchants of Babylon will trade in. What will these items be? Cars, iPhones, Grand Theft Auto video games? Cargo of gold, silver, jewels and pearls, fine linen, purple, silk and scarlet, all kinds of scented wood, all articles of ivory, all articles of costly wood, bronze, iron and marble, cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and chariots. Let me just repeat that. Horses and chariots and slaves, that is human souls. Not much of a market for trainers, high tensile steel or desktop computers in the end times, it would seem. This is all a long way from the glittering world of New Babylon of popular imaginings. But don't you need high technology to enforce the system of the beast? No, you don't. Not at all. Men have been tattooing themselves for millennia. The Jews of Nazi Germany were forbidden to buy from shops, and many relied on the charity of Gentiles. They didn't need to have silicon chips implanted. You simply go down to the market and buy a chicken, and the merchant says, "Will you show me your tattoo of 666?" And you say, "Well, I haven't got one, I'm a Christian." And he says, "I'm sorry, I can't sell it to you because they'll behead me." That's how it works. Ever since the end of the war and the recreation of Israel, there has been an outbreak of apocalyptic hysteria, and people have been reading all sorts of things into the prophecy of the Bible which just aren't there. Huge chunks of prophecy have to be ignored or misinterpreted to sustain this point of view, and all because people want to force prophecy to fit the times they live in. After all, it's only a few decades since communism was thought to be the red horse of the apocalypse, and then it wasn't. But suppose you were living in the 15th century when the advances in the sciences of navigation, printing and the military use of gunpowder were revolutionising the world. Zbigniew Brzezinski likened these developments to space travel, computers and nuclear weapons in the 20th century. And then, in 1492, Spain expelled the Jews and they went to live in the Ottoman Empire. Imagine the hysteria if the prophecy industry had existed then. What lesson does that tell you? But don't you need satellite television for the people of the world to watch the two witnesses of God in Revelation 11? For 3.5 days, men from the peoples and tribes and tongues and nations gaze at their dead bodies and refuse to let them be placed in a tomb. Do those words sound familiar? They should do. Read Acts chapter 2 when the first witnesses at Pentecost were surrounded by people from all tribes and tongues and nations, and they all listened in their own language, thanks to the power of the Holy Spirit. In any big cosmopolitan city, you get people from every tribe and tongue and nation. I wish it weren't the case, but it is. And television or not, you do have to be present to prevent someone being buried in a tomb. Now, I checked very carefully. The literal translation of the passage about the people of earth is a formulaic phrase which refers to the people of the world, the worldly people who want nothing to do with God. It's a phrase used often in Greek and refers to those who are happy with their lives on earth. It's got nothing to do with people in Santiago or Vladivostok watching cable news. Now, certainly, people will witness extraordinary things because the power of God and the devil will be unleashed, but you don't need modern technology for them. We forget the words of Sir Robert Anderson. In this age of grace, he said, the devil's power is so restrained that men hardly notice his existence. One day they will notice. It would be little problem for the devil to make an image speak. Supernatural powers, both good and evil, will be unleashed. Did you know, for example, that the total fatalities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were less than those warriors in Sennacherib's army slain by the angel of the Lord in the second book of Kings? And then there's the Olivet Discourse. One woman will be grinding at the stone. She won't be doing telesales to sell storm windows. These are traditional crafts. Wars and rumours of wars. These days, if there's a war, we know about it instantly. But in the Old Testament, Sennacherib was fooled by a rumour of war. There are many other examples. Some people will object to this. How can technology disappear, they say. Believe me, there are many precedents in history. And if you have a problem with that, my answer would be, go and try to build a pyramid. A contemporary of Aristotle was called Democritus. You will have heard of the former, but not the latter. Democritus was the one who thought that the world was made up of small units which we now call atoms. Aristotle thought it was made up of 5 elements. His crazy view was the consensus for centuries until Leibniz postulated the existence of what he called monads. And look how easily in history governments have suppressed information and new ideas. Read 1984 again. It's quite clear that the world of the end times will be very different from the world we know today. And if you remember from my book and my other videos, demon worship will prevail in the end times. Once again, the determination to force prophecy to fit the times has misled us. When the end times come, the earth will have returned to ancient knowledge. I have no idea how this will come about, although I might speculate. We are perfectly capable of destroying ourselves. I don't mean by this, as some people have suggested, that a war will start with bombers and missiles and end up with chariots, bows and arrows. That's obviously ridiculous. After all, the Germans didn't resort to slings and spears when the Allied armies destroyed their armaments industry. But in the medium term, this system of things will be degraded to the point where old technologies will emerge. We must make sure that we are so right with God that we never see it. Thank you for watching. My name is Paul Jones. Please be sure to read Concerning a Nation and watch my other videos. Thank you and God bless you.